The meeting had ended with a unanimous vote against Karen's proposals, but she sat alone in the empty community center, staring at her scattered papers and wondering how everything had gone so wrong. The custodian had already begun stacking chairs around her, but she couldn't bring herself to move. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Heard about the meeting. Come home. We need to talk. Karen finally gathered her materials, her hands trembling slightly as she packed her evidence into neat folders. Each photograph, each measurement, each carefully documented violation, it all felt suddenly meaningless, like props in a play that had lost its audience. The drive home took 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. Her house sat perfectly manicured under the streetlights, every blade of grass precisely trimmed, every garden edge sharp as a razor. It was exactly how she'd always wanted it, flawless, controlled, superior to everything around it. But as she pulled into her driveway, she noticed something that made her stomach clench. Mrs. Chen's house was dark except for one window, the kitchen, where she could see the elderly woman's silhouette moving slowly, probably cleaning up after another day of Karen's harassment. David was waiting in the living room, still in his work clothes, looking tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Karen, we need to talk about what happened tonight. You weren't there, Karen said defensively, setting down her briefcase with perhaps too much force. You don't understand what? I understand that our neighbors called you a bully. David interrupted gently. I understand that you tried to fine an elderly woman $500 for a broken sprinkler. I understand that you've been documenting Mrs. Chen's every move like she's some kind of criminal. Karen felt tears threatening, actual tears, which she hadn't experienced in years. I was protecting our property. I was maintaining standards. Someone has to what, Karen? Someone has to make sure our 78-year-old neighbor knows she's not welcome here. The words hit like a physical blow. Karen sank into her leather chair, the same chair where she'd planned her morning's campaign just 12 hours earlier. That's not what I was doing. Isn't it? David sat across from her, his voice still gentle but firm. Karen, I've watched you become someone I barely recognize. You used to care about people. You used to be the one organizing neighborhood barbecues, helping new families settle in. Now you're measuring garden gnomes with a ruler. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. Instead, she found herself thinking about Marcus's words. You're trying to fine her $500 because the sprinkler broke? I just wanted things to be right, she whispered. Right for who, Karen? Right for the neighborhood, or right for you? She looked around their living room, every pillow perfectly positioned, every magazine precisely aligned, every surface spotless and sterile. When had perfection become more important than people? I don't know how to fix this, she admitted, the words barely audible. David moved to the couch beside her. You could start by apologizing. To Mrs. Chen, to the neighbors, to yourself? He paused. Karen, you're not a bad person. You're just lost. And you've been trying to find yourself by controlling everything around you. That night, Karen lay awake staring at the ceiling, David's words echoing in her mind. Through their bedroom window, she could see Mrs. Chen's house, and she noticed something she'd never paid attention to before. A small light in the upstairs window, glowing softly like a beacon. Tomorrow, she decided, she would do something she hadn't done in years. She would admit she was wrong. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, one question haunted her. After burning so many bridges, would anyone still be willing to let her cross back over? And in the morning, she would discover that her real test wasn't about sprinklers or garden gnomes. It was about whether Karen Whitmore could find her way back to being human. The story was far from over. By 10 a.m., Karen had transformed her home office into a war room. Her mahogany desk was covered with printed HOA bylaws, property surveys, and a detailed timeline of Mrs. Chen's infractions going back 6 months. She changed into her power suit, navy blue with razor-sharp shoulders, and had already consumed 3 cups of coffee. Janet, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. Karen spoke into her headset, pacing behind her desk like a caged predator. Janet Richardson, HOA treasurer and Karen's closest ally, listened from her own pristine kitchen across the neighborhood. Karen, honey, I get it. But calling an emergency meeting over a broken sprinkler seems a bit what? Karen's voice sharpened. Excessive? Janet, this is about property values. This is about standards. Today it's Mrs. Chen's sprinkler. Tomorrow it's someone painting their mailbox the wrong shade of beige. Where does it end? Janet sighed. Okay. You have my signature. But we still need one more board member. Already handled, Karen said with satisfaction. Tom Bradley owes me a favor after I kept quiet about his fence being 3 inches too tall. He's signing this afternoon. Karen's doorbell chimed, and she glanced out her window to see a delivery truck pulling away. Perfect timing. She'd ordered a professional-grade water damage assessment kit online, expedited shipping. Documentation was everything in HOA warfare. Janet, I have to go. The meeting is set for tonight at 7. Community Center, main conference room. And make sure you bring those photos of Mrs. Chen's garden gnomes. I'm building a pattern of non-compliance. After hanging up, Karen retrieved her package and immediately began documenting water damage with scientific precision. She measured standing water depths, photographed every affected plant, and even collected water samples in small glass vials. Her neighbors might think she was being extreme, but Karen knew that amateur hour was for amateurs. Her phone buzzed with a text from her husband, David. Heard about the sprinkler situation. Maybe try talking to Mrs. Chen first? She's always been reasonable. Karen rolled her eyes. David's conflict avoidance approach was exactly why their homeowners association had become so lax. Someone had to maintain standards, and clearly that someone was her. She was labeling her final water sample when her doorbell rang again. Through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Chen standing on her doorstep, holding what appeared to be a homemade pie. Karen. Mrs. Chen's voice was tentative. I brought you some apple pie. I wanted to apologize properly and discuss how we can fix this. Karen opened the door but didn't invite her in. Mrs. Chen, I appreciate the gesture, but this matter is now in the hands of the HOA board. Any further communication should go through proper channels. The elderly woman's face fell. Please, Karen, I've already called a sprinkler repair company. They'll be here this afternoon. I'll pay for any damage to your yard, and I'll make sure this never happens again. For a moment, Karen felt a flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, or simple human compassion. Mrs. Chen looked genuinely distressed, and the pie did smell incredible. But then Karen remembered her principle. Give people an inch, and they'll take a mile. The emergency meeting is tonight at 7, Karen said firmly. You're welcome to attend and present your case to the board, but the wheels are already in motion. As she closed the door, Karen caught sight of her reflection again. Something in her expression had hardened over the past few hours. She looked like someone who meant business, someone who got results. The question was, what kind of results was she really after? Karen Whitmore stood in her pristine front yard at 6:47 am, clutching her phone like a weapon as muddy water cascaded from the neighbor's broken sprinkler system, soaking her designer yoga pants and creating a miniature flood that threatened her prized petunias. The sprinkler had apparently malfunctioned sometime during the night, and now Mrs. Chen's yard was shooting water directly onto Karen's property like a liquid artillery assault. This is absolutely unacceptable. Karen shrieked into her phone, her voice carrying across the entire Willowbrook Estates neighborhood. I demand immediate action from the HOA. This is a clear violation of Section 12.4 of our community guidelines. The sleepy voice of HOA President Bob Martinez crackled through her speaker. Karen, it's not even 7 in the morning. Count this wait until. Wait? Karen's voice climbed an octave. Bob, I've got a $100,000 landscaping project being destroyed by that woman's negligence. My Japanese maple is drowning. My imported Belgian tulips are floating away. And don't even get me started on what this is doing to my property value. She marched across her soggy lawn, her feet squelching with each step, phone still pressed to her ear. I want an emergency HOA meeting. Today, and I want Mrs. Chen fined for every minute this continues. Bob sighed audibly. Karen, you know emergency meetings require. I know what they require. Karen interrupted, now standing at her property line. glaring at the offending sprinkler. 3 board members' signatures. Well, consider this your wake-up call, Bob. I'm getting those signatures, and I'm getting them before lunch. Mrs. Chen's front door opened, and the elderly woman stepped out in her bathrobe, looking confused and concerned. "Oh my goodness, Karen. I'm so sorry. I had no idea the sprinkler was." "Save it for the HOA tribunal," Karen snapped, pointing an accusatory finger. "This is gross negligence, and I'm documenting everything." She held up her phone, recording the flood. Timestamp: 6:49 am. Defendant: Mrs. Chen, 1247 Maple Grove Lane. Violation: failure to maintain irrigation systems, resulting in property damage to adjacent homeowner. Mrs. Chen's face crumpled. "Karen, please. My grandson installed this system last weekend. I don't know how to—" "That's not my problem," Karen declared, her voice cold as ice. "Ignorance of proper maintenance isn't an excuse. You've damaged my property, disrupted my morning routine, and violated multiple HOA bylaws. I'm calling an emergency meeting, and I'm demanding full restitution." She turned on her heel, marching back toward her house, leaving wet footprints on her pristine walkway. Mrs. Chen called after her, "Karen, can't we just talk about this? I'll pay for any damage, I promise." But Karen was already dialing her next number, her mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just about the sprinkler anymore. This was about establishing precedent, about showing the entire neighborhood that rules mattered, that consequences were real. As she reached her front door, she caught her reflection in the glass. Her usually perfect hair was plastered to her head, her makeup slightly smeared, but her eyes blazed with determination. This was war, and Karen Whitmore always won her wars. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center buzzed with an unusual energy at 7 p.m. Karen had expected a small, formal hearing, but nearly 40 residents had shown up, turning the emergency meeting into the neighborhood event of the year. She sat at the front table with Bob Martinez and Janet Richardson, her carefully organized evidence spread before her like a prosecutor's case file. "This is highly irregular," Bob muttered, adjusting his reading glasses as he surveyed the crowd. "Emergency meetings are supposed to be limited to board members and directly affected parties." "Word travels fast," Janet whispered, but Karen detected something odd in her tone, almost like she was enjoying the spectacle. Karen stood, her navy suit impeccable under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight, we address a serious violation of our community standards, one that threatens not just my property, but the very foundation of what makes Willowbrook Estates the premier neighborhood in the county." She clicked her remote, and her first slide appeared on the portable screen she'd brought, a dramatic photo of the morning's flood, complete with measured water depths and property damage estimates totaling $3,847. At approximately 6:30 am this morning, Mrs. Chen's improperly maintained irrigation system caused significant flooding to my property, resulting in the destruction of rare botanical specimens and potential foundation damage. Mrs. Chen, sitting in the third row with her grandson beside her, raised her hand tentatively. "May I respond?" "You'll have your turn," Karen replied curtly, advancing to her next slide, a timeline of what she termed cumulative infractions. But as Karen detailed Mrs. Chen's supposed pattern of violations, garden gnomes that were supposedly too large, a mailbox that was allegedly the wrong shade of regulation beige, holiday decorations that stayed up one day past the HOA deadline, something shifted in the room's atmosphere. "Karen," interrupted Dr. Patterson from the back row, "isn't this a bit excessive? Mrs. Chen's been our neighbor for 12 years. She's the one who organized meals for the Henderson family when their son was in the hospital. And she always helps with the community garden," added Maria Santos. "My kids love her homemade cookies." Karen felt the room's sentiment turning, but she pressed forward. "Gentlemen, ladies, I understand Mrs. Chen is well liked, but rules exist for a reason. If we make exceptions based on popularity, we're not an HOA. We're a social club. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad," someone called out, prompting scattered laughter. Karen's jaw tightened. I'm requesting a formal fine of $500 and a written citation for Mrs. Chen's violations. Additionally, I propose mandatory quarterly inspections of all irrigation systems to prevent future incidents. $500. Mrs. Chen's grandson, Marcus, stood up. For a broken sprinkler? Ma'am, my grandmother is on a fixed income. She's already hired a repair company and offered to pay for any real damage. Karen's voice rose. The amount isn't the issue. It's about accountability. It's about you being a bully. Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Karen felt her face flush, her carefully constructed composure cracking. Excuse me. You heard me. Marcus continued, his voice steady but passionate. My grandmother has been nothing but kind to everyone in this neighborhood. She's helped more people here than I can count. And you're trying to fine her $500 because the sprinkler broke. The room erupted in murmurs of agreement. Karen looked around desperately, searching for support, but even Janet was avoiding her eyes. I am not a bully, Karen said, her voice shaking slightly. I am a concerned homeowner protecting our property values and community standards. By terrorizing an elderly woman over a broken sprinkler. Dr. Patterson stood up. Karen, I've known you for 5 years. You're smart, you're organized, and you care about this neighborhood. But this isn't about protecting anything. This is about power. The room fell silent again, waiting for Karen's response. She stood there, her evidence slide still glowing behind her, her carefully planned presentation crumbling around her. For the first time in years, Karen Whitmore was speechless.